Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning into IFFGD's Research Award winner series titled Where Are They Now? This program was actually designed so that we can not only acknowledge IFFGD's 30th anniversary year, but to also reconnect with our past Research Award winners. So today we actually have the pleasure of speaking with Dr. Dumitrascu, who was actually the 2003 IFFGD Research Award winner for International and Developing Nation Investigator in Clinical Trial and Basic Science. So thank you so much for joining us today. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and where you are currently?
Thank you, Hayley. I'm so proud to be selected for this discussion, this talk. My position now is full professor at the Medical University in Western Romania, Cluj-Napoca. In Romania, Eastern Europe, but Western Romania, it's one of the most important medical schools in Romania. I'm teaching there gastroenterology, internal medicine, and psychosomatic medicine. That's my career there. I had also some administrative positions. I stayed 2 years as chairman of the Romanian Society of Gastroenterology and Hepatology. I am now the chairman of the National Societies Committee of the United European Gastroenterology. This is like a kind of United Nations organization of the European Federation of Gastroenterological Societies. It's another chairman position for 3 years that I'm taking. I founded the Romanian Society of Neurogastroenterology, and for the moment I am honorary professor of this society. And I still work in psychosomatic medicine. I act as the president of the Romanian Society of Biopsychosocial Medicine. As you see, I copied a little bit. I learned from my mother, who is Professor Douglas Drossman, who was also important gastroenterologist, but was also for a time the president of the American Psychosomatic Society. So this is what I'm doing. So I have teaching activity, research activity, administrative jobs, and what most of us do at that time. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like you are definitely involved in a lot of things, especially just to advance the field of GI. And we can't say thank you enough for all of your involvement, especially with IFFGD. So how did winning the IFFGD Research Award help influence your career?
Yes, decisively. First of all, I would say I did not expect to receive this award. Have you seen? It's actually, it was at the time an award for developing nations. I'm not sure this continued. But when I got it, it was totally, let's say, unexpected for me. And I may say it was given to, let's say, to support my activity in Eastern Europe and also to emphasize my, let's say, my outcomes there. I imagine I came from an East European area, a sacrificed part of Europe after the World War II, and because of improper administration and management, totalitarian regime, I was in a little bit outside from the Western countries. I could develop myself in a career just only the fall of the Iron Curtain in 1990. In that time, I was benefiting of many free reprints that Dr. Ramos was sending to me by request in the late 80s. And then I met him first time in 94, and I was impressed not only by his papers, but also by his personality, and therefore he influenced my career. Therefore, I decided that gastroenterology is not only endoscopy, is not only hepatology. We also have to take care of different patients as well, but I also have to look for functional patients. These are so many and so difficult to treat. Therefore, I started in my area, I would say in Romania, but I was also a pioneer in East Europe on studies on psychosocial factors in irritable bowel syndrome, on motility studies, on gastroparesis, on functional dyspepsia. Coming from a country with a low financial supporting research. I was normally not able to publish just top papers, but just to be there and be present. Producing original data is important, and also educational data. The money that just now, to come back to your question, that I received were largely used for one of the first meeting of neurogastroenterology in East Europe, and the first in my country. It was organized in 2005 when we have it. So I reused this money, not just in buying. The amount was not so high to start a deep or let's say rocket project, but just use it for organizing first international meeting of neurogastroenterology in my area. But it was used, but not that money influenced my research, but the atmosphere, the contact with IFFGD was very important. Besides this, it was a time when it was a gut-brain function group, very similar in a time. Some people were overlapping in both groups, and also received from the Travel Award. So there were a lot of people around at that time that I met. They influenced me. I mentioned Bill Whitehead, I mentioned Grant Thompson, and many others, Richard Klaus. And I could contact a group of pioneers in the world, and their activity influenced me. I tried to replicate data in my area, to organize activity in my area, to educate doctors and patients in my area. I think this was the best impact of the position I got receiving the research award from you in 2003.
Yeah, and we're just so happy that, IFFGD could connect you with some of the pioneers here in the United States so that you can make an impact in your area in Eastern Europe. I mean, that's phenomenal just to hear how you were able to use the research money to broaden the research in your area. And speaking of some of the research that you are involved in, what are some of the topics that you are currently working on?
So most of the data clinical studies, we have a lot. So we performed a lot of clinical studies, epidemiological data. We see in this IBS global study, Romania is one of the few countries who is represented there, and our society was even a financial contributor to the budget of the study. That's important. Then we have a lot of studies on psychosocial factors, the effect of stress, effect of hostility, of anxiety, chronic constipation. We had studies on the personality of the patients with GERD. We have studies on gastroparesis and other factors influencing motilities. We produced also, without money, a lot of systematic reviews and meta-analysis of these topics. So if you check on PubMed, you will see what we could create in the last, let's say, 25 years or so.
Yeah, that's a lot of research actually coming out of your area. And so when you're doing these research studies, what do you hope to gain from these? And basically, what type of understanding do you want to gain to basically better understand some of the GI disorders in adults and children?
Thank you for this question. That's important. We do not produce research data and don't carry out research just for academical list of papers. We should try to help patients. Therefore, first, we have to know local data. How can we detect the patients? By the way, we were able to validate the Bristol tool scale form in Romania. It was one of the first countries who did this. So first, we have to know where we are. Who are the patients? What factors are predicting the disease? Correlation with the factors, and so on. That, I think, it's done in my area. Then we can see biological data, microbiota data. This is a little bit difficult to create, but we have some small studies also, biomarkers, and so, let's say, some translational research, but not of the quality of the big papers that I read from my mentors in Western Europe or the United States. Anyway, we have some important studies who were published and are cited as well. And then we look for the psychosocial factors and their influence, and that's important in functional disorders. More recently, we have papers on the diet. We published 2 years ago a dietary pyramid for IBS patients. Like we have the dietary pyramid for healthy nutrition. We have one for IBS based on evidence-based data. There's also a nice paper with good quotations. So we tried first to know where IFFGD are in my area. Second, we try to educate doctors. I think everybody, every practitioner, and even the students know about Rome criteria, the Rome 4 criteria. We disseminated this at large. And third, to trying to educate the patients. And here we use very much the, let's say, documents produced even by your foundation and by the Rome Foundation. It's very, very good documents for the use of patients. Some patients in Romania speak fluently, already easily English, or others need, let's say, summaries in Romania. We do not cover translation. So this is important. In the recent years, we try to disseminate around, like in the Republic of Moldavia. But we organized every 2 years international meetings where we invite leaders of opinion on functional disorders, if they are, because in some countries in EU there are not people interested every time in functional disorders. But we have every 2 years meeting where we discuss inviting such people interested, and we have reports. And in December, no, in summer, last summer we published, let's say, an overview of what is new in East Europe on IBS. So we focus not only on our country, but also in countries around.
Yeah, and from some of these studies that you're actually performing, what do you hope that other patients might be able to get a gist of understanding from it? I know you mentioned a little bit about like your IBS pyramid paper and some of the diet that focus on that, but what do you hope that patients actually gain from maybe coming across some of these research studies?
Correct. The patients usually do not read medical papers on PubMed or Clarivate and so on. But we have hubs, or we have internet dialogues or videos. And I am surprised to see that patients read them, follow them, recognize them, and even cite me when I talk with them. They remember, doctor, I read you talked about this. So we do have, let's say, dissemination programs, not so systematical, but in years they accumulated also in Romania. So internet, online papers, but also online videos and even YouTube videos. So there are people who are looking, functional disorders are chronic disorders. Patients are very focused on their symptoms. They try to get solutions for their suffering. So they search on internet. It's easier than in the huge libraries, classical libraries. And then they fall on different informations, good or bad. But I hope those who are from us are good, and I hope they benefit on using them.
Yeah, and that's awesome that you guys have been able to basically translate some of that research information into ways that patients can understand how to utilize that in day-to-day life. So out of all the research studies that you have been involved in, what would you consider maybe your most successful one, and why?
For me, the most important, the more successful is the participation to the IBS global study recently now. But beside this, the good one is the diet advice for doctors. But I even from the United States, I received once a letter, an email from a lady who wanted more information of this because that's in English. But anyway, I showed them also to our patients. I think this is also important. And looking for the citations, these are the study looking on catastrophizing. It's an international study by the late Professor Gerson, where we participated. Then there are some papers on it's a very good review on psychosocial factors that has many citations. I think these are different approaches. But again, I am very much indebted to the model personal development of Doug Dravsman, and I also tried to be like a disciple, to not just to copy, but to be influenced by he did. So we focused on education of the doctors, and we tried to attract the interest, the participations of the patient into their own control of the conditions, of their functional disorders. So I think that's important. If you look to bibliometric parameters, you get it in Clarivate, and you can see what others cite and see on functional disorders produced by our group.
Yes, yes, I agree. And then also, since winning the IFFGD Award back in 2003, what are some other acknowledgements that you may have received from other societies or organizations?
Yes, I received from GFP the Travel Award at the time. Then I was younger. Then in the same period, the World Gastroenterological Organization offered me a Young Clinician Award. Then I received from APS 2 grants, small American Psychosomatic Science, 2 small grants to organize group of interest in my country, in Romania. Then I have been acknowledged by the Hungarian and Moldavian societies of gastroenterologists of neighbored countries. I am an honorary member of these countries. In my country, I was and I am one of the few full members of the Romanian Academy of Medical Sciences. So I received, but even the fact that I was elected in the board of the European Association of Psychosomatic Medicine, of the European Society of Neurogastroenterology and Motility. I finished my terms there. I was in a time vice president of the European Society of Clinical Investigations. I think these are tokens of recognition. But I have to say that the good start was this Young Clinician Award in Los Angeles by the World Gastroenterological Organization, and then this one in Milwaukee in 2003. That was fantastic.
It sounds like you have definitely been acknowledged for all of the work that you have done in the field. And, you know, we just can't thank you enough for helping to advance the field of GI and just helping the patients with anything that you can through your research studies. So speaking of research and this entire program, you've talked a lot about some of the studies and how proud you are of them being published. What do you enjoy specifically about being a researcher, and why?
That your foundation has an important merit in stimulating the young investigators. They offer awards. I remember their meetings, the breakfast meetings in the morning when the Nortons participated and Cecil Rockers is participating. There are fantastic opportunities to meet friends from Japan to West Coast of the United States. And there we see how the young generation of doctors, for researchers, for practitioners, for adults or pediatricians are acknowledged for their activity. And what the foundation has done and will do is really very, very important.
Yeah, and then like what you said, research is definitely part of the future, and just understanding more about these GI conditions. That's what you do for research, and I understand that as being, or why that would be a part that you truly enjoy, is just being part of the future. So in part of some of the research studies that might be coming out of your lab, what do you see as being some of the gap needs in the GI community? And how do you see potentially some of those gap needs being fulfilled within your lab and research studies?
So we all need good PhD students. We need more and more doctoral programs. And what is important, to have very motivated young PhD students or other fellows. That's important. The second is financing. Sometimes we get European programs like this one is a project coordinated in Barcelona where Professor Santos' discovery. Then we had a COST project, another European project. So we may receive money from European programs. This is very competitive. It's a hard work, and the chance to succeed, to be funded, is small. Then we have national grants, and we also have local grants given by the university for PhD students. So the first need is to have more money in order to achieve equipments, to have reactants. Now you see a lot of the work is done on microbiota, a lot of done is done on genomics. So if you do not have enough financing for this, you will stay always at the periphery. It's important. But if you cannot reach enough money as you wish, you also can do your duty in your area in the way you can just to produce some original data that are considered by the scientific community. This whole situation in our area, in our country. So I think what we should do is, in the scientific research, as you say, hoping to get more financing that we have, but also hoping to get new therapies, because in recent years we haven't seen fantastic progress in therapy, unlike in other fields, like in cardiology or in oncology, where the progress is better observed, or we can better measure the progress in the therapy of this condition.
Yeah.
And third is the education of the patient. They have to know how to live with their condition. Many patients prefer to have an organic disease than to have a functional condition. That's important. Here we have to stress more on the attitude of patients and to interest them in their let's say, self-determination and autonomy of them.
Yeah, and I really like how you said basically just really educating patients and helping them better cope with some of their GI conditions day to day, because I think we both know, and anyone else who might be living with a functional GI disorder, that it has a major impact on the day-to-day life and the quality of life for many patients. Yeah. So just in knowing that you're part of a research team, and in being in Europe, it is very important for those financials to support the research so that, like you said, there's better treatment options available. And hopefully we'll see more funds in the future going towards GI disorders so that researchers like yourself can fulfill some of those gap needs. So I just want to say thank you to everyone who has tuned into IFFGD's new program. It is our Research Award winner series titled Where Are They Now? So, and today we actually had the pleasure of speaking with Dr. Dumitrascu, who actually won our 2003 Research Award. And we can't say thank you enough for your time today. And just thank you so much for your involvement in research as well.
Thank you. I also appreciate the contribution of the Foundation for my personal development.
Yes, thank you.